Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video, we're going to create a navbar or a navigation bar using vanilla CSS. Now I'll go ahead and let you know, this is not going to be the prettiest navbar you've ever seen. Because, two reasons. Number one, to make a good navbar and a pretty navbar is a very, very kind of work-intensive thing. There's a lot of moving parts, there's a lot of fiddly bits. To be 100% honest, I'm just not that good with front-end type stuff. I can make it do what I want it to do, but I haven't taken the time to learn front end to that level because I always just use frameworks. I use Bootstrap or Bullmeyer, things like that. However, it is a very good idea to be able to do at least the basics, because a lot of times you'll need this kind of stuff if you go to a job interview and they want you to whiteboard some stuff, or they want you to show them that you can know how to do this stuff. So it's a very, very good idea to do this, so we are going to do this. However, once we are done, we are going to scrap everything we do in this video and import Bootstrap and do it with Bootstrap, which is much easier and much prettier. That said, don't ignore this stuff. As I mentioned, this is important information. You need this for job interview type stuff. You need to have at least this level of understanding of CSS in order to work as a developer, especially with anything front end. So the first thing we want to do is to make a copy of our Yelp Comics folder so that we don't jack up all of our work, since we're going to delete all this anyway. So I'm going to cd up a level, ls to make sure I'm in the right place. Yep. So I need to cp for copy, -r for recursively, because we're copying a folder, and anytime you need to copy a folder or directory or whatever you want to call it, you have to do the -r so that it copies everything inside of it. So cp-r Yelp Comics, and then you give it the new name. We'll call it Yelp Comics Vanilla, because we're using vanilla CSS. So you'll notice that it's up here, and everything inside there is the exact same. So let's cd into Yelp Comics Vanilla, and we have all of our stuff. So step number one is we're going to create the partial that we're going to use for our navbar. Because remember, the purpose of the navbar is to kind of put it across the top on all of our pages. So we want it to be a partial because we don't want to have to be recreating it in every single page. So let's touch views /partials /navbar.ejs. And now, inside of our views directory, partials directory, we have navbar. And for now, let's just put an h1 that says navbar here. And what we need to do next is to import that navbar. Now, there are a few different ways we could do this. Theoretically, we could put this in our header. We could expand our header a little bit to actually include it right here. So we could do include partials /navbar. And that would work fine. That would stick it at the top of the body. Another option we have would be to come into our comics folder or whatever and edit this in a way that we would include it here. Now, there are pros and cons to each of these solutions. I personally like just putting it in the header. That way I don't have to add the include statement to all of the pages, especially for something like a navbar that's going to be on every single page. There's not really a reason to pull it out and put it in its own thing. However, if you're going to have the navbar on some pages but not others, then you would not want to include it in the header, because then you wouldn't be able to control which pages it gets rendered on and which ones it doesn't. So let's save and nodaemon app.js, and let's see if it works. And uh-oh, that doesn't work. Why not? Well, it's because of where we are including this from. So we need to go up a level, /partials /navbar. Try it again. There, it works fine. Again, the reason for this is because of the way that EJS works. Whenever you're including a template inside of a template, you have to kind of redo your root location. So whenever you're including a template inside of a template, you have to go up a level. Just keep that in mind. But now we've got it working. The navbar will be here. It'll be at the top. So now we can actually start messing with our navbar and making it better than just an H1 that says navbar here. So this is the part where I'm going to kind of get into a little bit of high-level design. I am not by any means a designer. I'm a code monkey, and that's pretty much it. I can't just come up with designs that look good. If you give me a picture of something, then I can make it, but don't ask me to actually design something or make something look good without a reference. So this navbar, I made it up, and it's not going to be the prettiest thing in the world, but it will work. All right, so first we are going to make a div with a class of nav, just to kind of contain the whole thing. Inside of there, we're going to have an unordered list, and we're going to have several list items. And we'll just kind of duplicate that. So let's make this first one will kind of be our home page. The second one will be to the comics. The third one will be to a search, if we were going to add like a search functionality. And the last one will be like login, as if we wanted to log into our account. So inside these LIs, we're going to add anchor tags. href equals that, and it's going to be home. And href equals /comics. That's going to be for the comics. Ahref equals, and this one we haven't made and we're not going to make yet, so it's just going to be like that. It's just going to be an empty link. And then finally, ahref equals the same, because we're not going to make a login page yet. So now we have this stuff. Let's refresh our page and see how ugly it looks. See, this is technically a navigation bar, but it's obviously ugly and terrible, and we hate it. So what we need to do is add some CSS. So let's shut our server down, clear, and add. We're going to touch public /CSS, and then we're going to call this navbar.css. So now inside of our public directory and CSS, we have a navbar. But you'll notice we can't import it right here, because you have to import your CSS links in the head. So we have to go into the header and import it. So we've got link href equals /css /navbar.css. The rel equals style sheet. And one thing to notice, because we are importing this in the head of all of our files, any styles we do inside of this will be applied to all of our pages, which can quickly get out of control. So just keep that in mind. So inside of our navbar.css, that's why I created this class of nav, and everything is going to be based off of that nav class. That way it keeps it contained to just this section. So inside of our navbar.css, we're going to do a few things. First, we're going to set our body to have a margin of 0, and that will be applied to our entire page, and that's to be expected. That's fine. To be 100% honest, this isn't best practice. We should put that inside of our styles.css, because the styles.css is where we want all the things that apply to everything. So actually, I'm just going to go ahead and do that. I got lazy when I pre-coded this in the background and put it in the navbar, but I'm just going to put it in the styles. So let's look here and refresh. You'll see that it now goes all the way to the side of the window, and we'll have to fix that later. So inside of our navbar, we're just going to have our nav class.nav. Position is going to be fixed. Now the reason for this is because we want this navbar to stay at the top of the page when we scroll down. Right now I can't scroll down because there's too much stuff. Let's make this bigger. And when I scroll down, you'll see the navbar scrolls off the screen, but we don't want that. We want the navbar to stay at the top of the screen. So position is fixed. And whenever you do fixed position, you have to kind of anchor it somewhere. So I want anchored to the top at 0, and then I want the width to be 100%. So let's save this, refresh, and see what it does. Uh-oh, look at that. What this does, by putting it as position fixed, it pulls it out of the normal flow of the page and just sticks it on the top, and everything else kind of overlaps it. So as I scroll down, you'll see it stays anchored to the top of the page. The problem with this is pretty obvious. Now we have the rest of the page kind of under it, and it looks terrible. Once we get more of the design done, we're going to add a little bit of a margin to the top of the H1 here in order to push it further down the page. So that's just something to keep in mind whenever you are going to fix your nav bars. So now we've got it anchored where we want. Let's start a little bit styling on the UL. So nav UL, and remember, nav space UL will select all the ULs inside of the nav. We only have one. List style is going to be none, because we don't want those annoying little dots on there. Background color, and I picked some colors out beforehand. FFFF14. This is based off of the Watchmen comic book. If you've never read Watchmen, it's one of the best ones out there. It's kind of thick at times, but it's absolutely fantastic. Text align is going to be center, padding of 0, and margin of 0. So let's save and refresh, see what it looks like. It's starting to look a little bit more like a nav bar. These links and everything inside are still horrible, but you can see that it's pretty good. Now these colors don't exactly match, so I might have to, let's go ahead and pick a different, let's find that. There we go, there's my hex color that I want. Paste and save. So now let's go in and start working on these actual list items. .nav li. We're going to set the font family to that red rose, and that one is being imported by our other CSS, our styles.css. Our font size to be 1.2 rem. Our line height to be about 40 pixels. The actual height of this of each li to be 40 pixels. And then the border, we're going to add a border on the bottom. 1px solid black. So let's refresh, see what that looks like. There we go, much better. One thing to notice is that I am designing this mobile first. I'm designing this for mobile, not desktop first, and then I'm going to use a media query to do the desktop version. So if we're going to look at this on mobile, this is what the navigation bar will look like on mobile. So now we've got the LIs. Let's get the anchor tags inside of them. .nav a. So that's all A tags inside of the nav bar. Text decoration none. I'll get rid of the underline because we don't want that. We're going to set the color to black, and that will get rid of the purple and blue link so that they don't actually look like links. And we'll set the cursor to pointer. Refresh. Now we see they're like that, and as we hover over them, we now know that they're links. The next thing I want to do is to make these change color whenever I hover over them. Again, this will not have any impact on mobile users, but it will help desktop users. Help them understand that these are indeed links. So .nav a hover, and remember the colon hover is a property that will allow you to do it only when things are being hovered. We're going to set the color to E92324. That's kind of the red here. So let's save and refresh. As I hover over it, you can see that they're now highlighted. This kind of reinforces to users that, hey, these are links, click on them. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on an active class. So .nav li.active. So in other words, anytime that you have an li with the active class, which we haven't made yet, we're going to do this. We're going to set the background color to black. Set the cursor to default. And again, this is not going to change anything because none of these are active. But if we come in here to our nav bar and let's say that we want this home one to be active, or actually we're on the comics page, so let's set the comic one to active. And we can just add that class using our JavaScript whenever we click on the links. So right now it doesn't really seem to be doing anything. Class, oh, it's because I added it to the A tag, not the li, because I am a dum-dum. Refresh. Now we've got that. We obviously can't see the text inside of it, so we'll have to fix that next. Navbar.css. So nav li.active a. And the reason we have to set it in here like this instead of just setting it up here is because of specificity, because we're setting .nav lia, or nav a's color up here to black, and that's more specific than it would have been right here. So we have to actually come in down here and set the color. We're going to set the color to that same yellow from above, wherever it is here. I think this is, no, that's the hover. Where's the yellow? There it is. Let's try that and see what we think. Refresh, so it's active. So now you can see, hey, this is where you are, basically. But one thing you'll notice is now it took away the hover. because, again, specificity, this is more specific than this. So now we have to come down and add one more, nav li.active a:hover. You can see how this can quickly get annoying, and set the color to this up here, to the same, to that red. Refresh. Now as we hover, it correctly does that. I don't know why I set the cursor to default there. It doesn't make any sense. Doesn't change anything. Alright, so that is what it looks like on mobile. But on desktop, that's obviously pretty terrible. So we're going to do a media query. If you remember media queries, the syntax is @media, and then you put in your query. Our query is going to be screen and open parentheses min width of 600 pixels, and then inside of here you put your selectors that you want to take effect whenever this is true. So in other words, whenever the width is at least 600 pixels, the minimum width is at least 600 pixels, do this. So we're just going to set the nav li's width of 120 pixels, border bottom is going to be none, height of 50 pixels, line height of 50 pixels, font size 1.4 rem, display, and this one is important, especially important, inline block, and then margin right -4 pixels. This last one just makes them a little bit closer together. So let's refresh, see what it looks like on desktop. Now we've got these four next to each other. And if you want, you can see, let's just comment out this margin right, and you can see it's a very small change. Refresh, see how tiny that little change is, but I like it because it pulls them closer together. Pulls them very slightly closer together. Refresh, and you can see there it's just slightly closer together, and I think it looks better. So we've still got this issue of it coming down over this stuff. So inside of our styles.css, we need to add some space. So let's look at the actual comics.ejs. Start with a page title. So we need to add a margin above that page title. So page title right now, we've got a margin of 1.5. Let's try 3.5. Refresh. Still not quite enough, maybe 4.5. Refresh. There we go, it's nice and centered between the two. And that's how that works. But again, notice this is going to break when we go here to mobile because it's still not enough. So we would include that in our media query. So best practice, again, inside of styles, would be to come down here at the bottom, get that same media query, so now we've got this, and we're going to take this right here, cut it out, paste it in here, because remember this is for the desktop. I don't know why that went onto the second. Fix our indentation. There we go. And then up here at the top, we're going to do the .page title and set the margin to the same, except we're going to make this, I don't know, 4.5 is not enough, so maybe 8 rem. Let's try it. Still not enough. 12. There we go. And you can see that on mobile, this is still ugly as anything. Got overlapping things, and it would take a lot of work to make this responsive using vanilla CSS, which is why in the very next video we're going to use Bootstrap. We're going to get rid of all this cool stuff we did and use Bootstrap, which will basically make this a billion times better user experience, and it'll make it a lot easier on us as developers. In this video, we created a ghetto ugly navbar that is actually responsive. On mobile version, or at least narrow screens, it looks different than it does on the desktop version. We did that using a media query inside of our navbar. We did all this with vanilla CSS. We didn't use any type of framework or anything like that. In order to make this work, we created a navbar.css and a navbar.ejs partial, and we simply imported that partial into our header, being sure to go use the up a directory location because we have a partial inside of a partial. In the next video, we're going to get rid of all of this and use Bootstrap to do it all for us and make it easier. As always, if you have any questions, please let me know. I'll be happy to help. Thanks.